Meeting for tonight, November 16th. First order of business will be minutes. So we have the minutes of August 17th. Any corrections, deletions, additions to that?
All right.
And then we also have minutes from September 21st. And I didn't see anything.
I didn't.
Everybody all set with minutes? And we have a motion to approve the minutes of August 17th and September 21.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. First order of business on the agenda is Summer Village. This is a continuation from August and September. Gentlemen, if you want to come up to the microphone, but before you start, the members of the board, these pieces here are for our use, but they stay here so that we have them for every meeting. And before we get started on Summer Village, Jeff would like to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, just for the record, could you state which members of the board are seated tonight for this petition?
So tonight on Summer Village, we're going to seek Dave and Dan to get our 5 members.
Okay, with Mr. Kazaniak, yourself, and Mr. Enos.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, there's a revised draft decision in your packet tonight. I wanted to give a little bit of an overview. We did hear the concerns about the applicant, and I think we certainly heard the concerns of the board. And my sense is that while the zoning board may be amenable to some of the requests of the applicant, you do have some ongoing legitimate concerns related to the usage of the loft areas in terms of safety, life safety issues. And so specifically, there may be some instances whereby the loft areas have been used as living space and occupied, which is not only contrary to the zoning board's decision, but it's inconsistent with the building code. They have those in place to protect people. And so to advance the discussion, as I mentioned, we have a draft decision for you. There's a couple of elements to this, and also reaching out with the applicant. They also suggested recording a separate document. As you know, there's already plain language that speaks to the restriction of loft areas, generally to be used for storage only. But as we know, sometimes in lengthy recorded documents, not everything is obvious to the casual reader. So they offered, which we thought was a good suggestion, to have a standalone separate document dedicated just to the usage or lack thereof of the loft areas, that it may not be used as living space. And we think that's a good idea, a good place to start. But that, in and of itself, it's another recorded document, though an improvement. And so one of the things that the draft decision suggests is that the decision would also serve to clarify some of their requests. So first, that exterior modifications can occur so long as it does not exceed the 800 square foot limitation previously imposed by this board. It clarifies that the loft areas do not count towards that 800 square foot limitation. It would allow attached storage structures like attached sheds to be permitted as an exterior modification, but that would count towards the 800 square foot limitation. And fourth, it would require that for new loft areas to be constructed, that any applicant who wants to undertake that process would have to submit as part of their application process an affidavit that acknowledges that new document that's dedicated to the loft areas. It's sort of a certificate of understanding that they would have to sign an affidavit acknowledging that and their intention to comply with it. And this would apply for any new lofts coming in, because I don't believe that we can necessarily go back in time, even if the trustees were amenable to that approach. Additionally, the association, we think, in order to balance, if you're to allow these other modifications, I understand your concerns that maybe it could some way lead to other loft areas happening, but to balance that, we think it's educating and reminding the cottage owners of it's not just a zoning issue, it's a life safety issue. And so we think they are a condominium association, and they are required to hold yearly meetings. And so we think whether as part of that annual meeting or the notification thereof, that there has to be something tangible in writing reminding them about the restriction of those loft areas. And so we think if this is done on a yearly basis, if someone comes in and applies for a new loft area, it raises the overall awareness of that cottage community. And so I think that may do as much or more good. It certainly would at least create a clear paper trail expressing this board's concern. It's out there in the public. It's a safety issue. And so I don't think anyone would be in a position to say that they're not aware of it going forward. And to us, that may at least be of some significant benefit. It would also streamline significant permitting process. If an individual cottage owner wanted to come in for even a 40 square foot addition, they would no longer need to seek additional relief from the zoning board. It would simply be part of the building permit process, as long as they were consistent with the restrictions set by the board. And so we don't think that this is asking too much. It's really more about education, raising awareness to the cottage community for this. We would also suggest that they would have to amend their governing condominium document to be consistent with the zoning board's decision, because if you do issue an approval, there would be some inconsistencies with their documents. And so you can correct me if I'm mistaken, but I believe amending your condominium documents would require a 67% vote of the entire association. And that's not just of those that attended the meeting, but it's a 67% of all cottage unit owners. And so to me, that action in and of itself would certainly raise the collective awareness significantly. And so that's why we suggested this as sort of a compromise. We understand you have some legitimate concerns. We understand that they have some concerns, and we thought that this might at least be a good place to start the conversation tonight.
Jeff, one other thing that we agreed to do is when the season opens every year, we give every owner a cottage manual. Part of that cottage manual is a 2-page executive summary that clearly identifies the key rules that you need to comply with. You know, the speed limit, those kinds of things. And we've agreed to add on that executive summary on page 1 that the lofts are non-livable space, so that there's an annual reminder in the document that everybody gets when they open up for the season, reminding them that loft space is non-livable space.
So
Okay.
we're welcome
So-
your comments.
So the other thing that I just wanted to add to your little spiel there, Jeff, is that these shed areas, just so that nobody's misunderstanding, can only be accessed from outside.
Correct. They're usually where the 2 bump outs are, what the developer did is he put the attached shed between the 2 bump outs, and they open out into the
So
backyard.
they can't be accessed from inside.
That's correct.
So before we get going, I would like to invite our building commissioner up to the microphone. I have some questions for him that may set the stage a little bit for what we're gonna go forth. So, Henry, could you come up and we got a couple of questions for you?
Mr. Chair, members of the board.
So, for the record, last time we met and the time before, there were some questions about some building permits that you had been involved with over there. And would you explain to this board what those permits really entailed after that storm?
Sure. So, unfortunately, Joe just put it up on the board here for me, so that's great. I appreciate it, Joe. Thank you. So, 3 Ravine and 9 Ravine, which was particularly called out in that meeting, we did some research. I should say my admin, she did a tremendous job getting all the paperwork for me. She did a great job for me. But we did the research on it and found that certificates of occupancy were issued for the property initially, for the properties. The final signatures that was probably what they seen was there was some roof damage. They had that little tornado microburst in there, so the 2 of the roofs were damaged, 3 and 9 Ravine. So they said that a final signature was seen on the card by me. That's what it was for. It was just for that damage of the storm. The certificates of occupancy were issued by my predecessors. They were issued correctly. Builder, what he provided and how that was done was also done correctly.
Okay. And so my next line of questioning is, if there is a violation of building code and zoning code regarding these lofts that exist, can you tell me what the fines are that would be imposed after we go through the process?
That's just a little tricky. What ends up happening is Mass General Law protects any of the units that are 10 years or older. If there's been nothing done against them, nobody's called up for any permitting or any issues with the permits that were issued for that. So those particular units would be protected. The units before that, I think we had a meeting with the folks from Summer Village, and they said they would work with us on it to take a look at the units and to see what was actually finished and what wasn't. And we said we would work on giving them a period of time to try to take care of the problems that were there. So, unless I see what's there, I don't know.
So if someone has a loft and it's being used as living space, does it matter when it was done?
Mass General Law protects the units 10 years.
Even though they're in violation?
If there's nothing that's been done against them, yes. Anything before that, we can act on.
Jeff?
Yeah, just question. Are you talking about zoning or are you talking about building code?
I'm talking about the zoning code.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think your question was, I think this board understands that structures are protected from zoning, 10 years if without benefit of a permit, 6 years if with benefit of permit.
Yeah.
But in terms of if something's in violation of the building code, is there, is that your question?
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to look a little bit into that, Scott, and get back to him. I don't have a solid answer.
Okay. But there is a fine?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, can I just say, so, I want to be clear though, if they were living in that loft, that would be against the zoning, not the building code.
That's actually building code, too.
It would be the building code?
Yeah.
Both.
Both, it would be both, okay.
The decision that was in place calls for just 2 bedrooms, so that's technically a 3rd bedroom, so that wouldn't, so it would apply to zoning, but the building code, because it doesn't have the egress requirements. Is what the problem is.
Any other questions for Henry?
I just have a general question.
Mm-hmm.
If per se, God forbid, someone gets hurt falling off a loft, and if someone wants to pursue a lawsuit, we should be absolved because we're against, we clearly stated no one should be staying in those lofts. And they're supposed to be notified, so I don't know if they'd have a leg to stand on suing.
So I'm not an attorney, I'm not town council, but I think if the cottages are constructed in accordance with building code, and if your zoning board decisions are written and acted upon in good faith, don't think the town has any significant risk. And I think an affirmative decision here with all of this information about raising the awareness and citing your concerns, and with their willing actions to sort of encourage adherence to the building code, I think that's really in everyone's interest.
Okay.
Can I just bring one other
Sure.
thing up here?
Yep.
So, and to kind of answer a little bit of your question there was a master deed given by the association, for the Summer Village Condominium Association, in section 7.8. I don't know if you get that, Joe, or not. Yeah, after the permits. Yep. Keep on going, 7.8. I got it highlighted. Okay, so 7.8 says living spaces and units may not expand upward, downward, or outward as to expand the size of the said unit not more than 800 square feet. In particular, no attic space above the first floor of the units may be used as living space or configured for use as living space. No unit may expand the space occupied by that unit. So, the master deed says it. It's right there. Okay? No matter what we do, it's there.
Mhm.
So, Scott, I do have one question. In some cases, it's my understanding that some of these cottages, I believe at the assessor level, are in excess of 800 square feet because they include the loft.
I'm not
Didn't
sure
I
of all the
see
costs.
somewhere where in some cases they're 12 or 1,300 feet because the loft was added to the 800?
For tax purposes, for the assessing.
It's certainly possible. I can't speak to what the assessing department has done, certainly in the past. But no matter what is listed there, loft areas, whether or not they are being used as living space, they do not qualify as living area under the building code because they do not meet the proper standards.
Yeah,
To answer your question, I have multiple cottages, same model. And if I go to the assessors records, one might say 804 feet, one might say 812 feet. And I know that they can't exceed 800 feet.
Right.
But that's what they were the day I bought it, and there's been no changes to it, but that's what the assessors record. So I don't know how those records are put together, but there are some that do list over, I haven't seen any that were like 11 or 1,200, but I've seen some that were, over 800 by a little bit. And what's amazing to me is two models exactly the same, built within months of each other. How could they be different? Because those guys, they built that, pretty regularly. So I don't know how those numbers were put together.
I guess my question is relative to Paul's comment. Do those need to be amended to 800 square feet or less?
Again, whatever the assessing department does, it really does not in any way change your jurisdiction. I mean,
No, I understand it, but they're still, the assessing department is still part of the town of Westford.
Yep. So we can certainly.
So I'm asking is if any of those are written to imply that that is living space, because it's the square footage, that's all. I don't want to make a huge deal out of it, but I think it's worth at least going back to them and making sure those records are in sync with the
So-
town's understanding.
So we share these decisions now with the assessor. We can certainly convey to them the importance, significance of the 800 square foot.
Yep.
Don't know who put those values in there originally. They predate the current, but as they go out, is it every 5 years or so, and do their inspections, we can certainly ask them to pay, they would pay particular attention to the area.
I think that would be a good idea.
We're certainly willing to do that.
Thank you, Henry, for
You
clarifying
want to tell
everything
them?
for us.
Yep.
How many units are, or how far under, if there's going to be additions, how far under 800 feet are some of the units? What do they have for a number of square feet that they could add on a bump out or a shed?
I think there are some in the high 600s.
Mine's to 650, 640.
Okay, so this is significant.
But from a board perspective, we've been very insistent that the changes not be dramatic. So for instance, when the builder decided to do the bump outs, originally the closets were built into the room, rooms are real small, so we did the bump outs. So we get less heartburn if someone wants to do a bump out, like everything else looks. But we've never approved something that's dramatically different than what's out there. We want the consistency of the look and feel at Summer Village. So if someone had 600, we're not gonna approve an addition on there to get to 800. That's gonna be out of character for everything else that's out there.
Yeah, the only thing that's been done is a closet, small closet, or a half bath. Right. That's it.
Side bath, yeah, half bath, yeah.
Yeah, and when thinking about, so to Larry's point, my neighbor has the exact same layout, exact same model as mine. Mine's listed as 800 square feet, theirs is listed as like 740 square feet. So there are inconsistencies. I don't know where that comes from.
Jeff?
Sorry, can we just get, I'm sorry if I missed it, but names of the people who are speaking for the minutes taker?
Oh, Larry Harrington, Chairman of the Board.
Mark DeRosa.
Jennifer Picard.
Thank you.
Okay, does the board have any other questions, ideas? Do you like what has been proposed? Do you don't like it? Do you want to see changes in it?
How about this correspondence about the health department? And they're waiting for DEP?
Well, that's another whole can of worms because.
Does that affect anything we're doing? Or is that just a,
In my opinion, you have your jurisdiction. All building permit applications are reviewed by the health department. If in the end there are ultimately concerns by DEP, then the health department could potentially withhold sign-off on applications. But in my opinion, I would not advise this board to not act on that which is within your jurisdiction for another jurisdiction. if
we
that
don't
makes
have to
sense.
wait for that, though, we can move forward.
You don't have to wait for it. Ultimately, if that's a problem or barrier for the applicant, they must resolve that with that reviewing authority.
Okay.
So I did have one other thing. I had asked that Henry provide sort of the criteria of, to add a permissible loft. So I'm just curious, if somebody wants to add a loft, do they come in for a building permit and then they do it case-by-case basis? Or is there a boilerplate that says this is a criteria you must meet?
We'll get the man to answer that for you right now.
So, since I've been here, there's been 4 lofts that have come to us, 2 that I've done complete reviews on. If they're applying for a permit for a loft and they're asking for, they're gonna say they're gonna provide us with an egress window, which means the requirements of an exit window from like a bedroom or something for the fire department or someone to get in, then that automatically sends a question to me is, all right, does that become livable space or habitable space? And the windows that I feel that are in place now were put in by the builder with the idea that those are gonna be storage units. If we put bigger windows in, we're encouraging them to use that as an egress, a living unit. We are encouraging to do that.
Okay, so thank you, but my question is slightly different.
Okay.
Somebody comes and asks for a permit.
Yeah.
Do we have a template that says, here's the criteria you must meet?
Building code, right?
Yep, it's whatever they come in with for the permit application.
Yeah, but I think we need, well, I'm suggesting there should be some consistency.
Well, I think the Mass Building Code is the one that makes it
Yeah.
consistent. We don't have
Okay,
the authority as this board to start saying, okay, the building code is wrong, it's right.
No, I'm not even going there, Scott, I'm just saying, if somebody comes and says, I wanna put a loft in, does the association, no, this is, call them guidelines, call it whatever you want, this is what you should build it to.
Well, if somebody's coming in and specifically has language that says loft on it, I'm looking at that as non-habitable space.
Different, okay.
So I'm not telling them that they have to put an egress window in there.
So you have a standard building permit application,
Yeah.
and as part of looking at that, you review it according to building code, as well as any governing decisions such as from planning board or zoning board of appeals, right?
Exactly.
So if there's something special created for cottages at Summer Village, no, everybody uses the same standard application and the same building code.
Okay, we're not,
The only thing that the code is specific to for an egress window is 20 by 24. That's the only thing I'm looking for that's specific in the language. Otherwise, any window or anything can be different.
okay, I thought at one point you had some discussion about the ladder. That was the criteria for the ladder to get to the loft. Not to make it a livable space, but to make it a safe space.
So that is reviewed as part of every application. And my understanding with the building commissioner is that while he wants to ensure that everything is adequate and safe, he does not want to try to require things that might make it appear as though we could be encouraging use of loft areas as living space. So he's ensuring it's adequate for the intended purpose and consistent with building code. I don't know how else to answer your question.
So I think we had a discussion here in the first or second meeting that the developer put up drywall, plaster, carpet, cable, air conditioning, all of that. And I think what the commissioner is getting to is when someone comes to the board, because they come to us first, if you said to us that it can't have carpet or it can't have drywall or it can't have air conditioning, we would like to know that as well, because if they put the plan before us, we want to make sure we're approving something to come before the town that we're all in agreement up front. So I thought what you were going to is, are you going to allow the carpet or not? Are you going to allow the air conditioning or not? Are you going to allow the drywall or not? Because that's what's, the 185 that are there today all have drywall, plaster, paint, air conditioning, carpet, and cable. And going forward, I think the question is, what will they have or not have, so there's consistency and we all know that going in.
That's where I was going.
Okay, that's what I thought. I'm sorry.
So, do we have that ability? Two
That's,
minds over here looking at each other.
that's very gray in my opinion, because zoning on the one hand may not govern that which is already regulated by the building code. And so it at least raises the question for me, to what level can you dictate what can and cannot be done in
Wouldn't that hit-
non-living space?
Wouldn't that hit the permitting department before we even saw that, and that could be, you know, addressed at that point in time, because they're gonna have to all meet the same criteria for the permitting. You're gonna have to get a building permit to change any of that thing, the lots, correct?
Typically, they'll come in with the permit application. If there's something, when I'm looking at it, that says, all right, this sends a flag that, well, we possibly have to send it to the zoning board just for them to take a look at it, we send it there. Otherwise, if it's a building code issue, we work it out with the contractor or the owner of the property. We pretty much tell, this is what you need to do, or whatever you propose to do. So it's pretty much worked out before you would even see it.
Right.
For example, I mean, not to belay the point, but certainly overemphasizing this loft use of this space. So why would anybody need a cable hookup up there? I mean, is there something we could restrict and say, even though some others have done that, obviously they've done it to use it as living space. Why else would you have a TV up there? But can we say that there's certain things that cannot be, as part of our decision, that cannot be added to the lofts, particularly the cable hookup? I mean, some gentleman mentioned at the last meeting, I think it's probably a good point, that if you rough in a loft, it's kind of messy and dusty and dirty, and you'd perhaps rather have it sheetrock in something, either a vinyl floor, or a particle floor, or carpeting, or something on the floor, other than just plywood. Well, that's a reasonable request, I think, to keep that clean, neat, and easy to clean. But a cable hookup, that just belies the point that it's gonna be used for kids to sit up there and watch TV.
What we could do, if the board is able to reach some sort of consensus this evening, we can capture that thought, and if council says we can include it, we can include it if the applicant does not object. Even if they do object, if council says we can include it, you can still try to incorporate that. But we would need to get a handle on, I mean, cable certainly seems like one of those.
How would you enforce that? There's not, that's not enforceable. They could put a cable.
The inspector is
Yeah,
gonna
but
inspect it.
they- They're not going to every unit, are you?
When they come for a permit, they gotta go
No,
again.
what I'm saying though, if they finish it off under the, they could go and run a cable up there with a cable split anytime they wanted to. I mean, you can't, you're not gonna stop that. I don't, you know, I agree with Jimmy, it should come into play, but I don't know how you
Well,
would
at some
ever
point
enforce
during
it.
the season, or during the end of the season, I think you inspect it, opening the season, you inspect the units. If there was some lots that had been added, I would think the enforcer could say, if we had that in our decision, if that was incorporated into our decision, and a new loft was added and you saw cable, that would be in violation, wouldn't it? If we had incorporated that?
If a new loft comes to us now, and there's one in the wings right now, 82 Western Pine, that permit application says it's for storage loft. Right, so when I'm reading that, I'm looking at that to say storage loft, so the shiplap lab that they want to put there all works as a storage loft. Right, if there's a bed up there after we do the inspection, no, it doesn't work anymore. Now it doesn't meet the needs of egress requirements. So, going back and trying to fix some of the units that have already been done, and that's a big project. I mean, it's huge.
I understand, no, that's certainly not where we need to go,
No.
sure, that's
Yeah,
not where we need to go.
we can't get involved
Yeah,
in that.
and no, neither do I. I really
I
don't
just
want
think
to
of
do
going
that.
forward,
Yeah.
not anything that's already existing.
Yeah.
But this is, an existing can of worms is what it is, but going forward, I would think
Yeah.
maybe, not permitting cable would be certainly something that I would think would be,
Well, you know, you never know though, Jim, like, what if they wanna put their router up there? Right, instead of not having, we don't, sometimes we don't even know, right?
Today, everything's wireless.
Yeah, I know.
So we get some,
Do we know,
That's true,
or
too.
this might be for Mark Larry, what the headroom is in these loft areas?
Well, that's the problem, that they have the slopes, so they get the 7 feet that they're supposed to meet, and then
The
50% of
5-foot
it,
walls,
yeah,
yeah.
and the 50%. The last one I did barely made it. It made it, but it didn't barely make it. So that's where you actually have to go in and do the measuring and checking it out to be sure.
I mean, follow it through the building code, I mean, it really covers everything, even the ship ladder. It tells you how wide the treads have to be, the rises can't be bigger than this. I mean, it's pretty thorough, but,
You're gonna be in great shape going up and down those lofts, Henry. All the exercise you need.
okay, so we have a decision in front of us. Once again, do we like the decision, don't like the decision? Do we want to change any language?
can I just have a question on the language?
Yes.
First page one, down, you touched on it, Jeff, about, and to encourage compliance with applicable building codes.
Yes.
I would think, instead of encourage, they have no choice, any applicable building codes, they would have to hit.
Well, again, the trouble is zoning may not regulate or condition anything governed by the building code. So we thought encourage was the strongest word that we could use in a zoning board decision.
All right.
Any other comments on language, what's involved? Do you want to add as a condition the no cable in the loft and see what town council has to say about it? Speak up. Okay, Jeff, add that in, please.
it may be.
Do you fellas have any other comments, questions?
No, the only thing I would reiterate is that for the 185 people that paid $20,000, you know, we've talked to the salesperson who said the developer knew that there would be occasional storage of people up there. That's why people paid $20,000. We've worked really hard with you over the last few months. We've notified all the real estate agents. We've notified all the owners in writing. We've agreed to do something different at the Registry of Deeds, because someone here on the board had mentioned, why didn't the lawyers catch this? Well, there's a lot of documents, so we said, okay, well, let's do a special document that'll catch their attention, and they'll let their client know that. So we as a board have tried to be as responsive as we could to your concerns, but like yourself, we're limited as a board, where our powers and responsibilities are. We do not have any power to go in and inspect cottages on a regular basis. So I can't go in at 7:30 at night and see someone sleeping up there or not sleeping up there. So we've gone as far as we can go, based on our attorney's representation, and we think we've been as responsive to your concerns as possible. So we're hoping that we can move this thing forward, and ultimately, the goal is to not burden you with bump outs and half baths ever again, because when this decision is done, as long as it's under 800 square feet, they'll go to the building department, and that'll all be done, and they will not be wasting your time anymore for this. And we can make it clear that, you know, we as a board are not approving anything that's an exception to the ruling in that sense. So it makes your life easier, it makes our life easier, but there are certain things I can't change and you can't change from what was approved 12 and 14 years ago. But we're doing the very best we can to reinforce on an annual basis to owners the requirements that it is storage space, not livable space.
So you'll eat your words at some point, because someone will come to you and say, we want to go above the 800 square feet. I guarantee it.
We can't because our master deed prohibits it.
I understand, but everybody wants an exception.
But people have asked over the years.
Yeah.
It has happened, and we
So
turn it
you
down.
can save us a
We
lot
just
of
say no.
time by you guys
Can't do
saying,
it.
nope, can't do it.
Absolutely.
It happens.
And we have.
Yeah.
We have. They have to come to us first, and we shut it down. So,
And you've looked at this decision, you're okay with the affidavit part of it? That,
For the new lofts.
yeah,
Yes.
and then you want to pursue that through your association
Yes.
voting and,
I can't guarantee you it'll happen in 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, but we'll work through the process. But what we did say to Jeff is that we would not require the 185 people who bought it through the developer from, in one case, we know that in the original models, there was a loft. And one of our board members actually lives in that model, so they've been there since they started 15 years ago. We can't go back to the 185 people and make them sign something because we have no power to do that. But going forward, it's a different story.
But you will have those 185 people get that opening packet.
Yes, that's
that has
correct.
the
Yep.
information in it.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
That's correct.
That's what, we can do that.
That's correct. We can do that, and we've agreed to do that.
Okay.
Which they all initially signed when they bought the facility they live in.
Correct.
So it was there, and they still ignored it, so.
Ask the average the average person who buys a condo if they've read their condo documents. You'll find 99 out of 100 have not read the documents.
Who's that on it? Us or you, your board?
It's neither. It's when the developer sold
on the buyer.
the cottage to the buyer, it was the buyer's responsibility to do their own due diligence and read the documents. In most condos across the United States, people don't read 62 or 87 pages of legalese. And so they listen to what the salesperson says, and the salesperson says, here's the key things you need to learn, you need to understand, and they generally accept that. That's why condos become a problem across the country later down the road, because people didn't understand what they bought.
we also have a limited number of realtors that represent cottages, and we reached out to them directly, each one of them, and told them that, made it very, very clear that they cannot represent this as living space or bedrooms, so.
So, are we happy?
so,
Okay.
we're never 100% happy, so.
Can we have a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Jeff and Joe, you've got all the particulars?
Yes, Mr. Chair, but I would respectfully ask a couple things. So one, I think we need an opportunity to refine the draft decision, not inconsistent with what has been discussed tonight. There's an additional condition about the cable in the loft areas. The applicant also volunteered to put warning language on page 1 of that annual notification document. We'd like a little opportunity to, just get some details from you on that.
We'll work together on the wording,
Yep.
sure.
So I would look for, even though it sounds like, unless there's, there may be public did you close the hearing?
No, we didn't vote on it.
Voted,
didn't
all right.
vote
We did not vote.
We did not yet ask, sorry, Mr. Chair, if you've opened this up for other public comments.
So is there any other public comment? We see you, come on up.
I just want to clarify that myself.
Can we have your name first?
It's Jennifer Picard from 18 Whispering Pines.
Yep.
So just looking for personal clarification on my permit, is that safe to resubmit tomorrow with no issues, or?
So,
I just want to, and I'm happy to sign whatever affidavit you need. I just don't know the process. So, I
so
guess
until there is a final decision that is clocked in with the town clerk's office, which I do envision it being some time, because we've got to work some details through the decision. There is an appeal period to the decision after it's clocked in. Some of it relates to a variance, and some of it is special permit. If it was only a special permit, you could potentially exercise at your own peril, but given that some of it is a variance, you may well have to wait for the 20-day appeal period.
Okay.
I have to confer with the building commissioner. I'm not sure if he's ready to answer, but unless somebody appeals it, I think the odds are in your favor. I don't know who would, Somerville maybe would appeal it, but
Yeah. I just want to follow the rules and make sure, like, anything that's flagged, so, and obviously it would work through Dave Lantain, would resubmit all of that stuff, so I just want to make sure if there's anything that I personally need to do or wait for,
But
it's,
to clarify for her, you're suggesting, if I heard correctly, that at their next meeting, they would give final approval on the wording?
Well,
Or can they do it tonight?
it sounded like the board had reached consensus that they don't need any new information to make an informed decision. So it sounds like they could close it, potentially approve it tonight, and the intention is that we would finalize the decision later. And so we would be asking for an extension of time, if needed, to finalize the decision. We'd obviously share it with you. We have to do some back and forth work. As long as it's consistent with what's happened here tonight, typically we have the chair review it, make sure he feels it's consistent with the board's intention tonight. If that's the case, we could clock it in. If we reach some sort of major disagreement, nothing would prevent us, as long as it's within the extension period, to come back to the board for clarification. But they can't really accept new information. It has to be consistent with what's been discussed here tonight.
You would notify her when it's clocked in, so then she could know when to resubmit her
Actually, when
application.
it is clocked in, we would be emailing it to you to let you know, and on that front page, it would tell you when the appeal period is up. So you would know the date when it's clocked in with the town clerk. And nothing prevents you necessarily from filing the application before the appeal period is up. It's just the permit cannot be issued until after all the legal matters have been resolved.
okay, so just to be clear, when the decision is final, I can resubmit the permit, and then get the decision during the appeal period, and then start the work, obviously, when the appeal period is.
After the building permit has been issued.
Got it, okay.
Give
Okay.
yourself a Christmas present.
I would like a Christmas present.
Do it around Christmas.
Okay.
That should
I would
be
like a
around
Christmas
that
present. All right,
Give
that
you enough
sounds great.
time.
All right, thank you, thank you.
Still wanna close the public hearing?
Do you want to close this hearing or leave it open,
I
or?
also don't wanna leave it open until next month.
Does the board feel that they have enough information to make an informed decision?
Well, is there anything the town council has to weigh in on any further? Are we,
Well, so far, the big ask of town council is about, can you put the, this would be subject to satisfactory review by town council. So if they have an issue, we can either bring it back to the board. Okay, we usually have language about minor modifications can be done at a public meeting. And if they don't have any objections to whatever the changes are, then we can simply move forward, run it by the chair, and the chair can, okay it, and we can clock it in. If there is a major disagreement, we could come back at a regular meeting, as long as the change is minor in nature. It could be, any changes could be discussed, as long as the content is finite, at a public meeting, to work it out. I think there is some risk to extending the public hearing. We don't yet have a date for December. January 18th, I think, is the next meeting. But if we go through this process, we share it with the applicant and the chair, and if you think you're consistent, we could clock it in well before the January meeting.
Which would be great for us, so that she can get moving on her.
okay, so I guess
So we can close the public
we
hearing.
can close.
Can close it.
Can close.
So can we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so are we voting on each special permit by itself? Gentlemen,
Mr. Chair, if I were you, it sounds like you have a draft decision that needs some minor tweaks.
Yeah.
You could potentially vote to approve, making reference to the draft decision with amendments to happen as discussed here tonight,
okay.
subject to
So,
satisfactory review by town council.
we have a draft decision with amendments that will be discussed with town council and staff. Can we have a motion to that effect? Dave,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and I also vote in the affirmative. So, we're on our way.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you
Thank
very
you for your
much.
cooperation
You're
and your
nice
help.
people, but we hope we never see you again.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank the staff who's been working with us on a regular basis, week after week, to try to work through all this. You've got really great staff.
It's a great staff, yeah. Okay, good luck.
Thank you.
All right, the next order of business is 58 Nutting Road with all its artwork.
Such as it is.
This is the continuance of a public hearing from September 21st. And the ask here is a home occupation in an RA zone. So, Attorney Robbins, I have it.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For the record, Attorney Melissa Robbins from the law firm of Farrell and Robbins. We're here tonight for a continuance of a special permit and variances for a home occupation. After the last board visit, which was a couple months ago, we did have a site visit out there. I know a couple of the board members came out, and I think it was great. Getting an idea of the site out here, you could actually see the berms, the significant berms in the rear of the property. You can see where the abutters were located, especially the abutters that came to support us. Some of them are again here tonight. I know in your application and you have some signature pages acknowledging that they support the application. I think it was also important because the people that were out there could also see that there's storage of nothing out there on the site. This isn't your typical contractor yard. I would not even call it that. This is a landscaping business that doesn't even operate there. So the people that came out on site could see that there was absolutely no piles of anything out there that were used in the everyday business, and everything was very neatly put away, either behind structures or in structures, so that there was no view from the road whatsoever. I think at the first hearing, I really went through all of the special permit criteria, but I was going to re-review the variances with Commissioner Fontaine to see if he wanted to withdraw any of them. Since the original opinion, he had found out that the structures could not be moved, and he didn't know about the screening, but he has opined that he'd like us to proceed with the variances as is, so I'm going to go through them with the board. Since there's a few variances, what I'm going to do first, if Mr. Chair, if it's okay, is just go through the criteria, and then I'll briefly hit each of the variances that Mr. Fontaine has determined that we need with the board, just to give the board an idea of what they are. They all fall under the home occupation zoning bylaw, so we're not jumping around, but this is what they are. So the first is that the site has a hardship owing to the soil shape and topography. I think anybody that's gone out to the site now, you can see that it has a topography that comes up towards the roadway and then gets lower into the back of the site. A couple of the board members had asked at the last meeting if that structure could be moved up or over, and I think when you're out there, you see why it cannot. If you move it up towards the roadway, it's actually gonna get higher in elevation, and it's not going to block the cars to the rear the way that it does now. It also blocks all of the equipment that's being stored back there. So that's actually in a great location. In addition to the landscaping that you saw at the last meeting, the board asked if we could enhance that. And the answer is yes, we can. So in your packet, you'll see this very pretty picture that's actually drawn by Keith Rose, which is impressive in itself. So you can see this is the enhanced landscaping. The previous landscaping we had shown was just the arborvitaes moving over from the rear of the property. There's significant trees that will block the front, and then some arborvitaes down the side. You can see with this enhanced landscaping, there's additional landscaping in the front, here, and then all the way up to the hydrants, up to the roadside. For those of you that were out on site, and Danny will know this answer, this is not a discontinued hydrant. I thought that they were black.
She's pointing to the black one.
Yes, the black one is not a discontinued hydrant. I thought this was the new one and this was the old one, but I heard from Lieutenant Parsons when I went to speak to him about it that this is actually a low flow hydrant. It has to remain. It can't be used for firefighting purposes, but it's not something that can be taken out. So you'll see them in the photo, and they will continue both to be there on the property. So something that I learned during this project. But you can see that it's completely blocked from view, this accessory structure with the landscaping. And as you're coming down Nutting Road, you're hardly gonna see it with all this significant landscaping in the way. The cars will actually be parked behind there, and we parked them behind there for the site visit so you could see that you can see nothing from the roadway. And then there's significant berming to the rear that blocks the town fields from the Rose's property and vice versa. And I can say, as being a user of those fields quite often, every Saturday morning between the hours of 9 and 10, I cannot see into the Rose property whatsoever, either from the other side. So the vehicles are either parked here, tucked into the accessory structure, or parked over to the side, the one with the trailer, so that it can come in and park beside that, shielded from view completely. There is another hardship owing to the soil shape and topography, that it is in a mixed-use area. When you look at the zoning map, you may just think this is a residential A area, but when you're out there, you can see how significant the fields are actually to the Rose property. They're surrounded by, to the right-hand side and to the rear of the property by the field. And although this may be seen as not a hardship to the community and an amenity for the town of Westford, I can tell you it's neither of those for the Rose property. During their busier season, when they have a few employees coming in and out, that town of Westford field has cars. I mean, I wouldn't even try to guess what the traffic is coming out in and out of that field area. So the traffic that's being generated from this property, which would be 4 vehicle trips, really, if he had 4 max employees, is nothing compared to the mixed-use area that the Roses are actually in. There's no detriment whatsoever, not even substantial detriment, but I would say no detriment to allowing this use to continue. And you don't have to take my word from it. I think that you heard all of the abutters at the last meeting that said that it was not a substantial detriment to them. It was actually a positive addition to their neighborhood, not just the business, but the Roses as neighbors, and they had no issue with it proceeding. I think it goes to show that they showed up at the last meeting and they've come back to this meeting to ensure that they could say it again if the board needed to hear it. But I think that that prong is easily proven by that. A denial of this use permit, again, I think that goes without saying. These people have operated for almost 20 years on this site. They've caused no issue. It's their sole income. And the denial of the permit would mean that they have no more business and cannot operate there, and it would probably force them to move. So that's a substantial financial impact if this use variance is denied. So that's basically the variance criteria that I didn't go through at the last meeting, just because I didn't know which one of these variances Commissioner Fontaine was want us to proceed with. So Joe has been nice enough to highlight which sections we are asking for variances from, and I will run through them briefly. So the first one, 3.4.2.1, I won't read to you, but it goes through the outside appearance. I think this has actually been easily dealt with through the landscaping and the topography out there, because from the outside appearance, you cannot tell that there's a business operating there. Again, this is being treated as a home occupation, but there's actually no occupation happening day to day on this site. A car comes and a car leaves, and it's done on other people's properties. So I think that criteria is easily dealt with, but that's the first variance that Mr. Fontaine has said we needed. The second one that I'm actually gonna ask to add, this is the one that Joe has highlighted in green, and I'll tell you why. This section says that you can't have more than 1 employee that lives on the property. And although these employees don't work on the property, they are being treated as employees of this home occupation. So although I don't think it's a direct violation of that section, I do think that I should request it from this board so it doesn't become a problem later. So I would like to add that section in the list of variances just so that the employees of the company can continue to be employees of the company. So that was an add, and that's why it's in green. Section 3.4.2.3, which states that the use will not adversely affect the uses in the residential district. I mean, again, obviously, you don't have to take my word for it. All the residents have proven this point. This was one of my points to Commissioner Fontaine, is that I think we meet the standard easily, especially with the abutter input, so I don't think we need a variance from this section, but it still is determination that we do, so we will proceed with it. 4 and 7 actually are all for parking and number of vehicles, so we can merge those two together. I think that the parking spaces are required. They're all tucked behind that accessory structure, so you don't see them. They're not new parking spaces. They're not actually parking spaces at all. They're just areas where the vehicles can be parked around that accessory structure. And then we do have 3 total commercial vehicles, which is in violation of this section, and we're asking for a variance. I will tell you, there was some confusion there for me, because by right, in the Westford zoning bylaw, you can park 1 commercial vehicle plus 2 more that are hidden from view by right. So this is actually in conflict with that section of the zoning bylaw. I always read this to say you could have 1 more for a total of 4, not that you could only have 1 if you were asking for special permit relief, but nonetheless, we are going to have more vehicles than what is required under prong 7, so I do need to ask for a variance. Those are the variances in a nutshell. The board had suggested at the last meeting as well that we add a friendly condition that says we will not increase our business size, and the equipment that is there today, including the trucks and equipment, will never increase in number. And we're very satisfied with that condition, or happy to add it as part of the condition of approval, as well as the maintenance of the landscaping. And we'd be happy to, I know I ran through that pretty quickly, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
Board have any questions? Joe?
Mr. Chair, if I may, you should designate either Mr. Earl or Mr. Brickco to sit on this matter.
Mr. Earl, could you sit on this?
Sure.
You were there. No questions, okay. So is there anybody in the audience to speak in opposition to this? We'll start with the easy one. Is there anybody in the audience to speak in favor of this? If you'd like to speak, come up to the microphone, give us your name, and tell us who you are. You gotta have at least one.
Good evening, thank you. I'm Robert Jones. I live at 56 Netting Road, right next to the Roses. I'm very happy with this plan. The landscaping will be beautiful. Keith does amazing work. As council said, this is his work that we're looking at right here. And I think all the neighbors would be very happy if we move forward.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Amy Cassidy. I live across the street at 59 Nutting Road. I agree with the landscaping. It's going to add 1 more layer of blocking out the fields, which continues to take on a bigger and bigger presence in our neighborhood, to now include the slow introduction of nighttime lights that are coming from the field into our yards. So even the more increased landscaping will block what is becoming an increasing problem in our neighborhood of the fields taking on more of a presence than I think was originally intended. So I think this is to benefit our street, that it detracts from the traffic and the nuisance that the field is becoming to that specific area of town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
A question on that schematic. I'm not sure I'm seeing how that building is that's the behind, right?
Behind the-
And to the right, isn't there there's a way out where you have a truck and a trailer?
Yes, and
It kind of swings around and does a loop and comes,
yeah, and it's pretty shielded. We actually had the truck parked there during the site visit, so you could see, and it's hard to see on these plans, but you can see poking out right here.
yeah.
So when you drive through and around, the truck will be there, but so you can see the tiny little bush is kind of in the front of our landscaping here. So when this is all in, you're not going to be able to even see the front, even though it's exposed to the front edge of that accessory structure. When you're
Yeah.
coming down Nutting, you'll not be able to see that truck
Okay.
parked there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it extends out further to obstruct a little more totally.
exactly.
Okay. That's what I thought. I just wanted to be clear.
And on the other side, that there's very thick vegetation heading towards the field, so you can't see that truck from the other side at all.
Anybody else on the board have any questions, comments? Okay. Typically, I am opposed to businesses being run in a residential area. However, in this case, I'm gonna give you a mulligan because that playground in the backyard was there long after you guys were there. And to the comments that I hear from the neighbors and from council, I can imagine the noise that creates. So your ask, I don't think, is anything that would take away from the neighborhood because the soccer field already does. So I think it's a nice plan that you've done. I just want to be sure that you have all your trucks and trailers and equipment listed so that later on down the road, someone says, oh, you can't keep that here. So with that being said, I'd like to make sure that under the special conditions, there's a Bobcat, an excavator, 2 trailers, and was it 3 trucks?
Yes, yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And
I'm sorry.
Three-
There are 3 trailers.
3 trucks,
Three-
3
okay,
trailers.
3
I'm sorry, we had
trailers,
the
yep.
list from the last meeting. I'm
Yep,
just
no,
trying to
that's
pull
why
it
I'm,
up from my notes.
that's why I'm asking. I want you to make sure you have everything you need. And assorted snow plows, also. Okay. So, if there's nothing further, can we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Joe, do you want the special permit first, or vote on everything together?
It could be helpful to have the variances first. You could certainly make it so that way you're making a motion to approve the variances identified in section 3.4.2, items 1 through 4 and number 7,
Okay.
then the special permit after that.
So, we're asking for a variance tonight, section 3.4.2, number 1, number 3, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 7. Can I have that motion?
So moved.
David?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
And I'll also vote in the affirmative. The other thing we're asking for is a special permit, section 3.4.2, to allow for the change in character of the dwelling or accessory building. Can I have that motion?
So moved.
David?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jimmy?
Yes.
And I also will vote in the affirmative. So you're all set. Good luck.
Thank you.
I'm anxious to see the landscape when it's done.
Thank you very much, Mr.
So
Chair.
you'll explain the
Yes,
days to write, days to appeal.
yes.
And thank you for the neighbors for coming. It makes our decision a lot easier.
Thank you, members of the board.
You're welcome.
We didn't put any time frame on the landscape.
Patriots could use it for a notice.
Yeah, it might be just,
Just started that now. I guess, hopefully his response does it. Obviously, he's not gonna do it now, it's gonna have to wait till
right,
spring.
it's gonna have to be in the spring. yeah.
I think it's just a bad coaching staff.
Keep an eye on that.
Oh, question.
Yeah, you got, I mean,
Street.
it is nice
Just
having you
about on the
guys
road.
with the plans already, already up and everything like that.
All right, so the next order of business is 58 Nutting Road. And we have Dan sit in on this.
Did you say, what did you say? Did you say 58 Nutting?
I'm sorry, 73 Brookside Road. We already did Nutting Road. So we'll change that to 73 Brookside. Dan's gonna sit on this. All right, for the record, tell us who you are. Hang on 1 minute.
You open the hearing?
Technicalities.
Okay. Yeah, well, we have those.
Can we have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now you can start.
All right. Hi, my name's Damian Dimitrick with Conoco Engineers and Scientists here at Bridgewater, Massachusetts. Here on behalf of Michael Mikhail in regards to the project at 73 Brookside Road, the Willows Pizza Place, as it might be referred to. So for this project, the existing structure is, no longer, I'm sorry, just looking at the plans as they're scrolling through. The existing structure is, no longer habited, boarded up, closed off. What we're trying to do is raise the structure, bring it, completely rebuild it, bring it back into further compliance with existing zoning bylaws. So, non-conforming problems like, edges of pavement and, the entrances, parking areas, things that were not there. We're actually pulling it more into compliance, not completely within compliance of the zoning bylaws. We're reducing, adding additional setbacks and that from the existing structure. Along with that, we're reducing the amount of pavement, and, trying to, make the lot a more cleaner and more accessible, usable lot for the town. In addition to that, the more pressing variance that we're coming for is for the multi-use of the property that is in with a business zone district, and it's actually partially business, partially industrial. One of the comments was that that line is not shown on the plan. We can definitely add that in, but the additional use will be an office building space on the second floor, and then the first floor is, going to maintain its restaurant status and just be a slight expansion, approximately 1,000 square feet, 20 feet forward, from the existing location of the front of the house, or the front of the restaurant. So for us, we're really trying to come in here, do as minimal as possible as far as, land area disturbance, trying to kind of give back some, grassed and landscaped areas, as well as, increasing the use and, function of the property by, having the restaurant space with a, a very minimal impact office space on the second floor, so lawyers, architects, engineers, anyone of that fashion to, be able to use the space. And so my client here can, get a little more out of existing pre-developed property. So, we're here in front of the board to ask for the variances for the use and the property line setbacks for just the parking lot, which we are pulling it, to better existing non-conforming.
Okay. Is there some reason that you can't put parking, what I would call in the back, so that you don't have to ask us for parking relief?
So what we're trying to do is, as you can see, we're in a lot of the riverfront areas and, wetland resource areas. We have the 100-foot buffer zone. We have the 200-foot riverfront areas. We're trying to minimize disturbance to existing, taking down trees and increasing the amount of already disturbed or undisturbed land, is what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to stay within the footprint of an existing developed disturbed area. So, it's just it's the fight of, going to the commission and, tearing down more trees and causing more hindrances to resource areas of the town.
So the only other alternative is to make it smaller. The building.
Yes, reducing the scope. I mean, we have an existing property that we're trying to, get more function out of it, and we're hoping that the zoning board can allow us to, make the most benefit out of a previously developed lot.
Wouldn't you gain more room if you had changed the orientation of the building?
Towards the...
Just turn it so you've got that main front of the building's facing towards the parking lot, that I can see.
Yeah, again, the problem there is that if we do that, then your property line is then going, your building would be oriented towards that weird juxtapose that comes into the property.
You almost run parallel to that if you would change the orientation, you'd pick up on the other side of it.
Understood. Again, we're trying to maintain much of that, of what's on the site already. not gonna really change grade, increase fill on the site, add other impacts to the development, really, sticking with how the property is laid out currently, will allow us to reduce the amount of work that has to occur. We're just going to be removing the base grade in the existing cover underneath, and just milling, or not, removing the bitumen, the top course and the undercourse down to the base, and then putting fresh pavement on top. The idea is we're coming in here trying to do as little work as possible, change the property, to be more in compliance with the zoning bylaws, and still, have a little bit of additional function.
Well, I can't see a hardship here because you have the land to do what you need to do. So when you come to us asking for variance criterion, on a parking situation, I think if you come to the backside of the lot, you got plenty of room to put parking in now. It could be in the riverfront, it could be in the lakefront. And I understand you're trying to do as little as possible, but yeah, I think we gotta do a little more, is my opinion. Or make the building smaller. Make it a one-story building, make it a restaurant only, don't put the offices up there, and then you'd have plenty of parking.
I think my question on the parking now is, if you have 17 spaces, you're gonna have certain amount of parking taken by employees, whether it's employees in your office space or employees in the restaurant. That would take up half a dozen acres. I mean, I don't know. I think it would be dependent on what you have for occupant, or for a tenant upstairs. But if you had some office space there, clients come in to that second floor business, as well as into the restaurant, as well as parking there by all the employees of that building. I'm not sure the parking is even sufficient.
You're gonna have takeout there as well?
I believe so. Michael, takeout?
Takeout.
Takeout restaurant, yeah, it's an existing pizza
Yes.
restaurant
That's
function.
additional parking going in and out of there all the time.
It just seems tight on the number of parking spaces that, at peak times, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, people are.
Yeah, so the parking ratio was based on the zoning bylaws, what is required for the site. I understand that, employee parking does exist, and we can increase it based off of your jurisdiction. I believe that is in your zoning bylaws, if you would like us to increase and add parking, for employees, that is something that we could, revise the plans as such. We're trying to get in front of the board, to have these discussions and work that way. What we ideally like to do is, we have an existing paved area. We have that for a functioning building, and we're trying to, maximize the function and the ability of the building to, have, profit and income and benefit to the town of another restaurant space, another office space that will, allow the town to take in more income for those, tax revenues, while doing as minimally we can as possible to affecting, undeveloped areas.
Are you gonna put a new septic system in, or you plan to tie into the existing one?
We plan to tie into the existing septic.
Orientation then.
Yeah.
You should have said that.
I apologize. Yeah. We are, we do not plan on putting the existing septic system from the discussions with the previous engineers and, the Board of Health, I believe is oversized for the property itself, actually.
So both floors?
Yes, from my understanding, the flow capacity of that system, it far exceeds the amount.
And where's the dumpster? Is that corrugated line?
Yeah, it's in the back of the property.
Back of the-
We hit it to the behind.
Okay, so there's access to that through, okay.
It's pretty open back there, though.
As there are grassed areas. I mean, it's cleared over the septic system as it was installed in that area. But there is, the tree line. It's not shown on this plan. There's also the existing railroad that passes by it. I actually have that on this plan and the site that was submitted to the planning board. I don't know if that is something that you would potentially have. We were just showing what was required for the, the plot plan for you guys, is, trying to keep it simple. But there is treed areas, vegetation back there. Again, the hope and the idea and the design of the project was to minimize additional disturbance to an existing lot, an existing developed lot.
So are you gonna take the existing blacktop out?
We're gonna remove the existing blacktop, and then the spaces that, you know, there's landscape, we'll take out the base course, fill it back in with, you know, clean fill, loam, seed it, you know, or in landscaping based on, you know, discussions with the commissions, you know, in small areas. So I think, you know, if you go to the existing plan, you know, you can see that the pavement, you know, crosses, you know, it is significantly greater at the front of the site, and then toward, you know, along the edge associated with the property line that comes into the site. So we're gonna be trying to remove out that pavement and fill back in landscaped areas to, you know, increase the, you know, visual and, you know, impacts to the resource areas.
Are you gonna have your outside dining here?
No, we're currently not proposing any outside dining.
So is there anybody in the audience to speak in opposition to this proposal? Come up and give us your name, please.
Not so much opposition, but I got some concerns.
Okay.
I'm Harry Johnson. I live on Jonas Road. I've been in Westford resident my whole life. I've been there 67 years. My only concern is, I don't mind Michael making the building bigger and, you know, to get some rental income. I don't mind that, but I think the proposed building, it's 57 feet long by 34. It just seems big for that neighborhood. I'd like to see maybe that building scaled back a little bit. You know, and like I say, I have no problem making it bigger than what's there, you know, for the rental income, but I'd like to see that building scaled back to fit more of the neighborhood.
Okay.
That's
yeah.
my,
Okay, thank
that
you.
was my concern.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It looks like the existing building was 652 square feet.
Right.
I don't know
They're
what the
adding 1,000
dimensions are,
square
but
feet.
They're adding, yeah,
We're adding 1,000 square feet.
about 2 stories, yeah.
Yeah, for 2 stories. You guys realize that these multi-use buildings don't work,
I
as
mean,
far as trying to rent them. We got several of them in town, and the second floor is always empty.
understood. I mean, that's from what we're proposing, you know,
Mhm.
you know, that's, we'd like to try it.
Okay. So I think you've heard a lot of comment about parking, size of the building. Joe,
Ask if anybody's here to speak in favor, or
is there anybody here to speak in favor? Other than the applicant? No?
Just, I wonder, does the board, how is the board feeling about some of the variance criteria? Do you think, if you think you need more information about any of the variance criteria, are you?
Well, I personally think that, you know, if they address the parking issue the way I've asked them to, then that's one variance they don't need. You know, I think that would be a big help. You know, whether you decide to make the building smaller, add more parking, get it out of the, you know, less than a foot from the lot line, you know, that's, you know, and generally this board, we, you know, 5 or 6 feet is kind of the minimum.
Okay.
So,
.07's kind of stretching.
yeah, it's less than a foot, yeah.
Yeah, I
I mean, you can't even mow the lawn without stepping on your neighbor's yard.
understood. You know, it's, I guess it's the existing, you know, edge of pavement crosses that line. So, you know, we saw it as, again, we're just trying to reduce our amount of impact. Outside of that, we were able to fit our proposed parking to meet the requirements of the town within the existing pavement footprint. You know, if there's specific, you know, that we would like to add, you know, try and reduce it and modify it in a way to, you know, make the parking better, you know, and get it across. My concern is that we're then going to be adding pavement to currently, you know, unpaved area. You know, and understood that this board, you know, we gotta go front of, and, you know, you guys make that decision. You know, but that's why we're coming here and, you know, trying to ask for a variance, you know, to, you know, show what we currently have and use that to the best of our ability.
So I can't, part of the reason I'm asking that is because I can't see that there's a hardship. You can't say to me, the lot's too small, we can't put parking anywhere else. So I think that's part of the issue. You know, it would be nice to get some of that parking off of Brookside Road, so that people aren't, you know, driving in, driving out, cars parked right there.
And I'm not sure if that, you know, I think the parking is it's kind of a catch-22 here, because the existing, it seems like the existing back piece beyond where the building is, and this goes back to when we were looking at that, the cell tower, and back in there and all that wooded area, you've got properties there that are looking at, across from Gilson Brook on Jonas Road, if I'm not mistaken, and that's a pretty historic area. You know, if the parking was where the wooded area is now, they have a vastly different view. Instead of looking at the wooded area and over the brook, they're looking at pavement. So, I don't know where we are with that. If you take it away from the front, put it in the back, then that disturbs the somewhat existing scenic view, or wooded view, of the people that are directly looking out there back over the brook. So, I don't know if I'm in favor of seeing all that, maybe, I don't know,
I don't think you move all of it back there, but just some of it, just to get, you know, to put
yeah,
to
well, I
pull
don't know
it
how
in.
far, I mean, I almost like, but
I
think we
guarantee
should.
employees will be parking back there.
Well, like, you know, the 4 parking spaces, like, how do you get to those 4 parking spaces? Is that?
Over the top of the septic that you see going in there, that there's that pavement edge goes over the top of the
you're
existing
gonna go
tanks.
over there,
Yeah,
okay.
so that's their access. There's 20 feet of width there, for them to, you know, navigate through. So,
So also, I was gonna, because your loading dock in the back, right? Obviously, you're gonna have trucks coming in and out of there. Is that truck's gonna be able to get through where that parking is on Brookside Road there? It doesn't look like you got a lot of space there, you know?
yeah, you know, again,
Right, you know, right, I mean, here's your loading docks here, right?
yep.
And so, I mean, sometimes there's some good-sized trucks coming in to deliver that food. Are they gonna be able to get in there? Is that what you're working right through there then, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, the trucks, I don't think they're, you know, giant 18-wheelers coming in, you know, they're, you know, these trucks are, you know, normal, you know, delivering sodas or stuff to, you know, the restaurant. So I
I guess I'm just saying, what the board's trying to say, though, is if you can take some space off of that Brookside Road, that would give you more room there, you know, and it'd be a safer situation for traffic coming in and out and
Right
delivering
now,
and
it's
stuff
the
like
egress
that.
all the way around the building.
Yeah, I get,
You could change your, I think you change your orientation, you change the whole dimensions of the parking lot.
I don't, you know, disagree, but, you know, we're going in front of the board asking for the variances, to try and, again, maintain, the existing parking and existing development of the property. You know, if we want, you know, we could redesign the site to have greater impacts and, you know, avoid coming to this board, and go straight to site plan review and the commission, and we're coming to the board to ask for these variances so that we could, you know, reduce our impacts to the, you know, surrounding areas, you know, trees being cut down, additional pavement, impacts to the resource areas.
Where is the shed gonna be moved? It says relocate the shed.
It's right next to the dumpster. It's a relocated shed.
Oh, that's where it's gonna go.
That's where it's
Okay.
gonna go. The existing shed is, you know, in the back, close to that area, you know, it's just gonna be picked up and moved slightly.
Is that S? With the-
Nope, the S is the, septic tank. That's associated with the septic system.
Is with the dumpster, where is that gonna be again?
That's gonna be right next to the shed in the back.
Right near the shed in the back, okay.
Yep.
So the big issue with that is, how are you gonna get a trash truck in there to get that dumpster dumped?
If the board requests, I can perform an auto turn analysis, with, standard, dump trucks and, confirm that that will occur.
Do you know the distance between the dumpster and the building?
The distance between the dumpster and the building, not off the top of my head the exact number, but it appears approximately 50 feet.
Where do you anticipate employees of the second floor parking then? I guess what do you envision there?
So the main access is through the front, and the stairs to the second story is there.
So the front would be where Brookside is there? Yeah, that's the entrance there?
Yeah,
Is that the entrance for the pizza place too then?
Yes, both entrances are there, and then there's a stairwell and a elevator to the second floor. And employee parking would occur, at the, as they see on the site, the
So
parking
they'd be
is
coming
per the.
through it wouldn't be coming through the exit on the other side then? Or is that exit for people who are coming in and out?
The architectural plans that are shown are from, that's the front facing elevation, I believe, yeah. So that door, as shown, would be there, and then if we scroll up to the floor plan,
Would that be a fire exit only?
would that be the only fire exit?
No, would that be a fire exit only, that door on that side?
The door on the side, the receiving dock, or at the rear?
Well, depending on how you're looking at it. Yeah.
I'm sorry. So there's the receiving dock. If you look at the architecturals, this might give you a better idea of the layout of the actual building. So the entrance, towards the left of the screen, that's the main entrance. That's what's towards the front. The receiving dock, is at the side, next to the storage areas in the kitchen, and then at the rear of the property, is that additional exit.
Because the previous building, the parking wasn't where 12 spots are now, right? I mean,
It was kind of an open space
Yeah,
parking. There wasn't really
a lot of
any.
pizza there, so.
It was helter-skelter parking.
It was helter-skelter, yeah, there was no.
Yeah. So we, with our design, we've kind of conformed it. We'll be putting paint marks, making it, you notice the entrance kind of bottlenecks down rather than having that, wide entrance, for traffic flows and control there. The idea and why we're coming to this board is to reduce, the impacts, but allow for greater use and function of the property. So we could increase, we could move the parking. I don't disagree with you guys. It's an economic hindrance and it's a developmentally hindrance to the surrounding environmental concerns. Like, we're in the riverfront for the Brookside. There is a barrier of the railroad between us and the river. But, again, there are trees in that area. There are, it is a regulated habitat, NOI, we have to go in front of the commission, and we're just hoping to do this as a redevelopment project.
I was wondering, are there any restrictions to using that parking near the railroad there? I know the railroad can be very challenging sometimes. I didn't know, do you have to get permits to have parking that close to that rail, I guess?
I don't believe so. I wouldn't be aware, I'm not aware of any.
Yeah, you might
Okay,
want to
check into railroad permits, understood.
Jeff?
Mr. Chair, maybe it might be helpful, I don't know how much guidance the board has offered yet with respect to the variance request for more than one principal use on the lot. Because that could, obviously have a huge impact, and if the board feels they have good information for that, or is there anything you need from the applicant on that? Because that's a huge part of the whole project.
Well, I think the more than one principal use, we did have a email that was sent to us today from somebody, the Habermans, and she doesn't have a problem with the restaurant portion of it, but she does have a problem with the second floor portion of it. Because it's a historic district, she feels that it's a little bit too much for the site. The headache that I get over the whole thing is, You know, the plan says, and Jimmy pointed this out, the plan says you have 17 spaces, and there's actually 21.
Isn't there 4 more behind that, where the dumpster is there?
Yep.
Yeah.
So 12 and
Your
5 is
charts-
17, and 4 is 21.
Your chart shows 17, but it looks like you have 4 more behind the building. So would that be like employee parking or something? Is that?
Yes. Yeah. I was under the impression it was only.
Looks like you have 21 total,
Yeah. Yeah.
rather than 17, which, okay. Which helps, I guess.
Yeah, I think. So.
So I think the other issue with this regarding the, I don't know if it's regarding the second floor or not regarding the second floor, is if you get 4 cars parked, the employee parking, you still can't get the trash truck in there. So that's an issue. I don't think you addressed any snow removal ideas on this piece of property, where you're gonna push all the snow. That's something I'd be interested in.
Runoff with the brook there.
Yeah, but runoff's not our deal, it's conservation. So I just think that, I think the parking issue has to be addressed. I think you don't need to be here for parking. You do need to be here for multi-use, but I think you can get, parking somewhere else on this lot, regardless of how much impact it creates. And that gets rid of one variance. Anybody else have any comment on multi-use?
Well, is it a deal breaker to go with the multi-use? I mean, is we only just put a restaurant there? As you mentioned, you know, there's a lot of space all over town, so that may be a little bit of a risk to begin with. Even a restaurant that, you know, even have a little more capacity, but not the second floor, or an outdoor patio, or, I don't know.
Do you envision what type of office space it would be, like who would be renting?
Yeah, we're proposing it as a professional office space, so, you know, architect, lawyer, our engineer, you know, accountant, you know, any of those kind of types of professional, you know, consulting type businesses.
How many spaces are you gonna have upstairs? 4
How many?
offices, potentially?
It's just the one main office, or, you know, one large office area, open space office area as proposed.
One tenant.
Yeah, one business tenant, yeah, it's not gonna be multiple tenants in that office area.
And there is one right across the street, too. There is an office business.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's consistent
property
with
across the
the
street,
area,
but
right,
it's-
yeah.
it's minimal use, I guess.
The old common area.
One next to Pete's is almost empty as well.
So once again, you know, I can't see a hardship for granting the variance for multi-use. I just don't see it. You know, financial or otherwise, I don't think there is a financial hardship. You'd like to have the space up there. And we've had public comment, you know, that, feels that it would do substantial detriment to the public good. So, I mean, I could be convinced, but I'm not convinced yet.
Yeah. So, I mean, if, you know, the board allows, we can come back with revisions to the parking, see if we can work through some other concepts to, you know, that would better agree with you guys' variances. You know, we're happy, that's why we're here, to kind of communicate with you guys and figure out what we can get to work, for everybody. We'd like to, you know, if amenable to the board, you know, if you guys would like to continue us, and, you know, we can, you know, but I would like to confirm, you know, the variances associated with, you know, the other ones are still up in the air, except, you know, generally thought to be accepted before I go through some of that other rigmarole, or, you know, process.
I think it's a substantial change in that neighborhood. I mean, it's been a restaurant there, a small little restaurant for a long period of time.
What type of
And
food?
everybody's, I think, is accustomed to that, and it's been part of the neighborhood character. And to upgrade that and have a nice, neat little new restaurant there would be replicating what was there 40 years ago or more.
50
But to
years.
put a whole second story and to have that, again, from the neighbors across the street, looking at, it's a vast change, and I'm not sure if there's an ability to recreate a restaurant there and do well with it, then I think that's an advantage to that neighborhood, because obviously there's an eyesore that's there now. But to put another business operation or a commercial operation on top of a restaurant is a bit of a sea change for that area, particularly with the historic concept over on Jonas Way and across the brook. It's a bit onerous, I
See,
think.
Fran Levine built that. The house that's adjacent to it, that was his home. That's why he could build it so close.
The unit, that's to the,
Uphill.
plan south, are you talking?
The house up the hill.
Up the hill.
Up the hill, Michael.
That
lives
was the
there
original
currently.
owner's house when he built that. What type of food are you gonna serve there?
It's pizza shop. Gonna be pizza shop,
Pizza.
like before.
Same as you had
It's
before.
the same, yes.
Yeah. Same as you had before.
So, do you understand what we're saying?
Understood.
Anybody else have comments, questions?
I think the only thing would be, I think you need to kind of convince the board why you would need that multi-use piece upstairs. Why? I mean, you really haven't, to your point, there's no hardship or anything, or why to do that. So maybe you have to come back to us, there's a compelling reason for that.
Yeah, I understood, the multi-use is for, increased function of the property, to allow for greater income to, help support the pizza business, to help, support Michael, he goes by Michael, his name's Mag. So, just, it's additional use, it's, economic hardship, per se, to add, to allow for that would allow increased, economic income for, a use that's, as across the street, there is the, salon / accounting firm, we want to redevelop the project and allow for, we can fit it in the developed area, but also increase the function and economic value of the property.
Yeah, I know, I think, unfortunately, right now, the building's an eyesore to the neighborhood, obviously, right? And getting something done is always a benefit to the neighborhood. I guess, growing up in that area, I mean, having another restaurant or whatever, just helps the whole neighborhood community and stuff like that, so.
Could you consider making an office suite on the same level as the restaurant? Make the building bigger?
Again, that plays into the developed area, and.
Keep talking about the developed area, but we
I understood, and that's just why,
Yeah.
we're going with that. Again, we're here to come in front of the board and figure out, what is amenable and how we can, work with you guys to, get a plan that's gonna work for, you guys, the zoning board. This is what we were coming in with our first, attempt to make sure that we can, get something that works, to the greatest ability for Michael here, be able to have his, pizza shop that's expanded, that's gonna have more space for him, his, tenant or his customers, and then additional, tenant, on his second floor that, could be usable space to, for additional income for him. So, that's why we're coming here to the board, to, to work with you, to find something that works, for the best of our ability on it,
It looks like, from this schematic too, it looks like it's a bit of a challenging lot. It's certainly got some acreage, but it's a long, narrow lot. Looks like the railroad goes right through it.
Yeah.
And that's certainly something you can't disturb. So I think you are constrained by the way that thing kind of pinches in, and then you have all that area in the back, but the railroad's there, the brook is there. It's not a real sizable, workable lot. It's just that sort of front section that really seems usable. The back part of it, I'm not sure what you could do with that between the wetlands and the railroad. You probably don't have a lot of room to probably not a lot of options there to do much more.
How many
than
square
what's
feet's the
there.
overall lot?
What's the overall square footage of the lot?
It's a big lot.
We're looking at 100,000, or 124,000.
You know, it's handcuffing you. You're trying to use that same septic system, and it's gonna handcuff you with the building and the parking.
I don't know if you can put it anywhere else, Paul. I don't think,
Oh, you can- This
I-
is pretty
you know.
open back here. You ever walk it down there? There's nothing
I
much there.
think, yeah. And maybe we should, as a board, we should probably, between now and next meeting, individually go through there, take a walk through. I have sort of gone by there a lot, but not walked back deep into that lot. And we didn't even do it when the cell tower thing came up.
There's no activity on the trains right now at all.
Dan?
I was just gonna say, that, I mean, as regards to the septic, they can, still utilize the septic area, might just have to relocate the septic tank and the grease trap and stuff.
Yeah, you don't have to do the whole thing.
Right.
Leach field's fine.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you've heard our comments. If you can redesign, change some parking, and come back to us, I think that would be what we're kind of looking for.
Understood.
Okay. So, I'm getting a look from the big boss here.
I'm in charge of nobody, just ask anyone in my department. Yeah. Well, it sounds like there would be a lot of thinking on the part of the applicant. I know you'll have to have some conversations with your client, and it may take a little time to evaluate options. During the holidays, I'm not sure if a December meeting would work best. That could be a very abbreviated turnaround time, because we might actually be meeting, we have a meeting conflict, and it might be pushed far sooner than anticipated,
Plus,
so.
the applicant has filed with the Conservation Commission, so they'll be getting feedback from them. They'll be getting feedback from the planning board as well.
So the other suggestion that I would make to you is have a neighborhood meeting.
Okay.
Get the people down on Jonas Road. Mr. Johnson will give you names and phone numbers for people over there, and just kind of see what the neighbors think. Show them your plan, and see if they like it or don't like it, before you spend a lot of time trying to refigure everything.
Even some of the people on Nabnasa Street on that end.
Yeah.
You know,
They'll give you a good idea as to what they're
It's a
doing.
tight-knit neighborhood.
Understood. Yeah.
Because people get notices and they look and go, oh, yeah, okay, and they throw it away. So if you go reach out to these people, you'd be surprised, you'll get some good
And there'd also be
feedback.
potential customers.
Right.
Yeah. It sounds like we have some past past customers here,
Oh, yeah.
and some potential future.
Yeah.
Since high school. Before high school, actually.
So, the next regular meeting date in January would be the 18th. They would then be better informed, starting the process with the commission, maybe have a chance to meet with the neighbors, maybe the board could do a site would like. Would the applicant be amenable to granting an extension of time for the board to act on this, to carry us past the January meeting?
Yep.
Yes? Okay, we'll need that in writing, but we appreciate that.
But make it the January meeting?
Yeah.
January
18?
Joe, is it January 18th?
January 18th, yeah.
Okay.
Nothing in December then.
Not as of yet.
Okay. Well, I don't want to jinx it.
We have a deadline coming.
So can we have a motion to continue this to January 18th?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. All right, gentlemen,
Thank you.
you've got your homework.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, papers, and more papers. All right.
Under our jurisdiction, but I'd like to see the facade of the building look a little bit more like the neighborhood now.
Looks like it's the regular duplex building.
So the next item of business is 34 Groton Road. We'd like to open the meeting without discussion and continue it to a January meeting, correct, Joseph?
That's correct. We did have a conversation with the applicant Monday. And while, they would have liked the second week of December, they themselves have a conflict the third week of December. We also tried to get some alternative meeting locations, but there were other meetings booked in other public meeting places, so, January, they're willing to move to January.
Okay. All right. So can we have a motion to open 34 Groton Road, and without discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that one's moving on. Meeting schedule. Okay, so the next order of business is the discussion on rules and regulations about language. And if you go to the last page, Dave Earl's over there jumping for joy.
We do. We also do have the meeting schedule.
Yep, we have probably all looked at it. As of
Yep.
right now, I think it's fine. Do we have
Third
the-
Wednesday, no curveballs, no anything, no
It's
holiday.
easy enough to remember, third
conflicts.
Wednesday.
So,
Okay.
The last page.
So I've read all through this, and this is kind of getting back to our roots. The suggested language in the last paragraph, I think, is perfect. If you have to put in the other paragraphs for whatever, that's great, but I think the last one is the key to our happiness. And is it the intention of staff to include this little piece of language with every application?
we could certainly, go ahead.
So my quick thoughts, some of this, if it applies to the applicants, then yes, that belongs in the information we give for applicants. There's other, I think there's other language that relates to materials from the public, and so we have to maybe think about, modify our public hearing notice, share it on our website, because we'd have to adopt, I think, a formal, we have to put something in writing to be effective, excuse me, and we have to take a look and see where it makes sense to put that, and whether or not that can be included in any of the abutter notification.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I think if you can put it in the abutter notification, that would be very helpful.
Right, so in the mailings that go to the abutters, that might be one thing. We don't want to necessarily add $200 to the publication fee, because with a little sun right now, it's.
Right, I would just, in the mailings that go to the butters, make that one paragraph that goes in there with it. Do you need a vote?
Well, we probably, the purpose of tonight, I believe, was to just see, are you in line with this sort of thinking? If you are, you may have to have a separate agenda item to formally adopt the language.
So does anybody have comment?
Looks good to me.
It's fine.
It's fine with me.
So I think the general consensus is, this is the direction we want to go. And we'll leave it up to staff to figure out the rest.
All right, we will do so.
Boy, it really slows down here, doesn't it?
Hey, we're all busy, all right?
So the next piece of information that was supplied to us is this MBTA communities and the requirements and the next steps. And which one of you would like to talk to this?
Guess that would be me.
That gets to flow uphill, that one.
So, as you may or may not know, Westford is considered an MBTA adjacent community. We are mandated to have a zoning bylaw in place that has at least one district of reasonable size that permits multifamily housing as of right. And so that would typically mean like a site plan review process. With special permits, the board retains discretion to say no, even if certain criteria are met. That would not be the case in this situation. The state has said we want more housing produced, and so you must have a big enough district. Westford is on the hook to create potential for 924 units. It doesn't mean that any of them need to be built, and it doesn't mean that we cannot take credit for some existing multifamily developments. And so right now, we are in interim compliance. The minimum density that the zoning bylaw must allow is for 15 units per acre, which is pretty dense. And as a reference, the two Bell Westford properties, they are at a density of about 10 units per acre. And I think it would be very challenging to actually reach a density of 15 units per acre because we are not on municipal sewer system here. So a lot of those communities that can easily make that, they have municipal sewer to tie into. So right now, the town must submit an action plan by the end of January, this coming January. The action plan does not tie our hands in any way. If we suggest something in this action plan, we're not bound by it. The state wants to see that we are actually thinking about this, starting to really think about it, and that we have a plan in place, a timeline, a schedule that allows for a bylaw to be adopted before our deadline, which is the end of 2024. So that being said, sure, we have a lot of information in your packet, but we also have a lot more information online. We gave you a link to that. We prefer to come out of the gate with as much information to start the conversation earlier rather than dragging our feet. We are required to include a draft graphical depiction of such a zoning district in the action plan that gets submitted in January. So we are, at this time, the planning board just started their conversation at their meeting of November 7th. The final guidance documents did not come into place until October 21st. So this is happening pretty quickly, and we have to, we're trying to get comments from various boards and committees and stakeholders to go back to the planning board such that that board can make a recommendation to the select board all in time before the January deadline to go to the select board and submit to DHCD. So we came out of the gate. Thank you, Joe, for pulling this up. We have some beginnings of a suggested area. We started this conversation with the planning board. To us, it made some logical sense to try to include some of the existing multifamily developments. We started with the two Bell Westford properties. I had a direct conversation with the state because I knew this question would come up, is can we take credit for existing multifamily? And the answer is yes, to a point. But we also must show some reasonable potential for some additional units to be created. And so when we pick these areas, we try to pick some where we weren't just cherry picking and getting all the multifamily developments, and we're trying to pair it up with actual potential. So we thought this would be very defensible. And so, Joe, if you can point, you got the Bell Westford there. Just below that, that's some of the industrial land that would have been the third phase of that overall park development. To us, that made some logical sense. It would be right next to existing multifamily developments. We did reach out to the water department to look at those areas in town, not just where municipal water is available, but where they actually had the capacity to support high-density residential development. So it did make some logical sense to just sort of consider, if you look at that, what is it, red, magenta, whatever the outline is, it made sense to at least have a conversation about all of those properties. The ones that are shaded in green we thought had some special value or reason to consider including in the district. We even have some properties, can you go to Orchard Square, Joe? No, just scroll up a little. So,
There you go.
yeah, so just to the right of that, a little bit, that's Orchard Square. There's some rules in their guidelines. So for instance, we need to have a minimum of 25 contiguous acres as sort of a base for such a district. And you can include other areas or tracts of land. They don't have to be contiguous, but in order to count, they need to be of a certain minimum size. So the pockets must be 5 acres or greater. And so while we don't necessarily think that Orchard Square is, maybe the best target for multifamily development, by including that and combining the abutting properties, it satisfies the math for the minimum area. It does create some future redevelopment potential there at the corner and, Elliott Road there. And if we go to the other side of 495, the other side of Elliott Road, there's already an existing multifamily development there, Concord Place, but there's 2 small parcels also, the old Wolf's Den. So we looked at little areas like this also. It wouldn't have a lot of impact because the area is very small there, but it could still promote some positive redevelopment. Yes, sir.
Where do they anticipate the towns to get this money to purchase this land? Are there gonna be grants on this?
No, the town wouldn't be purchasing. The whole goal is to have a zoning bylaw
Right, and just open it up.
that would allow it, yes.
Now, do we have to be so close to the station, Wilton and Lowell, there's only 2 stations, well, Air is a little further away.
So we did, we're an adjacent community because we are next to Acton and Littleton that benefits from commuter rail service. So we developed a whole list of possible criteria to consider. I'm not sure if that was in your packet. It might have been in the link. Not sure. But we had like a bunch of criteria. Some of it is, look, is the infrastructure there, to support, the transportation aspect, water infrastructure, proximity to some of those target areas that you talked about, Paul. It's also just proximity to 495, Route 3, and some of the other roads.
Just for my own stupidity, like the tennis club or the Regency, they've got enough land to get, to say we can support some housing on it?
So Westford Swim and Tennis Club was included. We didn't include other parcels on that side because that is identified in both our comprehensive master plan and our housing production plan as a possible site for either multifamily or affordable housing development.
If they choose to sell.
If they choose to sell, or yes. So again, and the Regency makes some sense because location-wise, from a planning perspective, there's a lot of walkable destinations there. It's very close to highway access. The other reason is that industry, has not been in the strongest shape of late. And I think there's been some prolonged periods of vacancy. I think they and another hotel have appealed their valuation rates because of the prolonged vacancies. And so we thought it made sense to at least include this. Certainly if this, and none of these property owners haven't reached out to us. We're just starting the conversation with the planning board and others. And yes, we are reaching out to these stakeholders. Their take was, as long as it's a planning process, we don't care as long as it doesn't take away any of our rights. Well, what we're proposing right now is an overlay. So it wouldn't take away any of the existing rights. It would just give additional opportunities if someone wanted to avail themselves of it. So an overlay there, could it potentially result in a drastic change to the Regency? It could. It could also allow for them to take some of their long-term vacant space and maybe convert it to, some limited form of housing that maybe they could make something happen there. So it isn't necessarily all gloom and doom. It can also create opportunities. And for us, it made sense to include some of the land between 495 and Littleton Road. There are some underdeveloped properties. There is that property that already has a controlled intersection there, so that makes some sense.
Is this the only corridor in Westford that we're looking at right now?
Is there what?
This is the only corridor you're looking at in Westford right now?
We did consider some other areas, and so if you go to, say, the Princeton property side of town by Chelmsford, so to me at least, that's less genuine because you already have Princeton is developed. You have a bunch of multifamily developments already with minimal opportunities to pair it up with more potential. But we are happy to consider all parts of town. We suggested exploring maybe some of the quarries, Merrill's Quarry and Graniteville Materials. At this time, the planning board preliminarily would prefer to stick more towards Littleton Road area. We have some on Concord, some on Powers at this point.
What about
We-
that field across from Emerson?
Oh, that would be
That's a
the
church.
church.
That's the
It's-
church owns that,
It's
yeah.
permitted for a
You're
church.
kidding me.
No.
Church of who?
Some Baptist church, Good Faith.
Are we on
Baptist
TV?
Church.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be kidding.
We did look at some other village areas, Graniteville in particular. There are some special challenges there. So
Called lack of land.
there's some septic issues out there, and right now it might not be compatible with high density development. We think we've got to solve some of those problems. The other issue is we think Graniteville, they have some great historical features there, and what might work for Littleton Road wouldn't necessarily be a good fit for, say, Graniteville, and we think that needs special attention for that neighborhood. So, but we're happy to listen to any of your thoughts or suggestions. One of ours that we'd like to include is we don't want this to be an all or nothing. If someone invokes the multifamily opportunity, we don't think it should rob that parcel of the potential for commercial development. So we think mixed use would make good sense here. In fact, it makes a lot of sense from a planning perspective. If you include some retail or, say, restaurant as part of a project, you could be saving vehicle trips right there where people can actually walk. And there are potential plans to widen portions of Littleton Road that haven't been gotten to yet, further past the Regency towards Littleton. So we think there'll be some opportunities moving forward. So we don't want to just check the state's box. We do want to create some opportunities that we think are good for Westford, for some positive redevelopment. And we do need more housing. So, and I think we do have to look at some things. We cannot require any age restrictions, but it might be possible to incentivize that. So we can require we believe we can require some affordable component, not perhaps as much as a 40B, but maybe there could be a way for some healthy bartering if there is a requirement for affordable housing. Well, maybe that can be waived if there's specific types of developments that the town would like to see that we can encourage, but we can't require. So, I mean, there's lots of opportunities to try to promote what we really want, even if we can't necessarily require all of it under the state guidelines right now. So it's a lot to take in. You're not going to be bound or committed by anything, but we definitely would love to hear some of your thoughts, even if it's not tonight. We can still share it with the planning board, and even if it's after the action plan gets submitted, this is going to be a lengthy public planning process, so there's going to be lots of chances to weigh in.
But they're not planning on giving up any town land.
There's nothing proposed
You know what I'm saying?
at this
That's not in the
point.
book right now.
As of right now, no, but it's so early in the process.
Oh, you got a lot of work by January?
Yes. Yep,
Sorry,
it's on my
Joe.
mind.
Guess where it goes, Joe.
Yeah. We did also take a brief look at Route 40, but thought that was going to be a really nuanced, I guess, planning process and considerations for that area. So really stuck to the focus to be 110 at this point.
For now.
Okay. Questions?
Very well put together document here.
My
Quite a
team has been
comprehensive,
great.
it's a comprehensive, good start, that's for sure.
Do we know, is there any way to track the occupancy of properties like Bell and Princeton? Do we know all that stuff was built, but are their occupancy rates 70, 80, 90?
I think they're higher.
I think I don't have anything in writing, but the last that I heard, they were well in the 90s. And there was a period of time that they were, I think, fully. I mean, they leased up. They were trying to delay the second, what is now the second Bell, 2 Robins. They were crazy with the first one, and allegedly they escalated some of the market rates to try to slow things down, and it didn't. So, and that is why we are now still being approached by possible developers because they still want to come to Westford. It's very strong for housing, even now, with all this uncertainty.
How about the occupancy of the Abbott Mills? Is that?
I am not as familiar with that. I think
It's pretty high.
I think it's pretty high, but I don't have that factually. I can certainly find
Not
it.
maxed out, though.
I don't think so. He was working on the last building for the rental,
Yeah.
completely separate from Millworks.
Right, yeah. Well,
Which I figured he would have had it done by now.
Oh, I think that.
I think Millworks slowed him right up. He put all his energy into that and money.
There's like
problem.
100 and 100, right? 100
One
in
of
the
them,
mill and
the latter
100.
phase has, I think, might be 102.
Yes, yeah, it's in the hundreds,
Yeah.
low hundreds, yeah.
So, I mean, all the multifamily developments, to my knowledge, in all recent times, it had very successful lease up or sale. And that's why we keep getting approached.
So I don't know if you could do much with that granite,
Consider
though.
some existing, but yeah,
It's a
there's no,
different animal.
there's no
I'd
formula,
like to get, I'd like
suggested
to make
formula.
a
Well-
house and get rid
You know,
of.
out of the 900, is there,
Right, so,
900 plus, is there any idea what we might be able to already?
so nothing is simple. So the state has said if say there's the 240 units for the first Bell property, it's not as simple as saying you get to count that for, 240 units. Doesn't work like that. It pretends that every site is a blank canvas. You throw in the variables and they will tell you how many units you may credit that site for. Could be exactly what is there, it could be more, it could be less. The problem is we do not yet have access to this wonderful estimation tool. It's not available yet. It might be available this month?
They said November.
Yeah, so we can't even tell you how much we can get credit for even this suggested district. And we don't expect that we will have the time, by the time we have to submit an action plan, to even tell you that. But the important thing is, we want to at least suggest a district, and if there's features that we want to include, like mixed-use development or an affordable component, those are some things that we want to just get into the early stages, which again, doesn't bind us in any way yet.
And some of those items are the things we asked in the survey at the strategic planning retreat. We started them anyway. You got a summary of the results. There were a little over 200 people that responded to that survey. It's a summary of the results of that.
Yeah.
We provide more detail if you'd like.
Some interesting, and some of them surprising results. So,
Was there somebody talking about the Westford Tennis Club to develop that?
yes, the Hanover company approached the select board for potentially partnering up or, being a co-applicant to have a sort of friendly 40B there. And allegedly, the select board seemed willing. They would want certain features as part of such a project, but at the end of the day, we heard that the on-site soils did not support the magnitude of a development that would have worked financially for Hanover, so that deal fell through.
Would that be potentially the same problem in Granville, like on the Franklin properties and stuff with the
I guess it depends
soil?
if there's an on-site sewer or if there's a way to off-site.
Yeah.
How much acreage is down by where Bobby's Branch is? That's where I'm thinking you can have your most available open space.
Don't know.
A lot of his is in Acton though, isn't it?
No, most of it's, a lot of it's in Westford.
Is it mostly, I thought it was a lot of
Like
it was
that
in Acton.
Avalon Bay project?
Yeah, yeah.
All of, yeah, there's 3 buildings plus the sewer treatment plant in Westford.
Oh, that's in Westford
Oh,
too?
yeah.
Yeah, Westford got the shape. But it's pretty wet back there.
It is.
On the Westford side.
Like even on River Street, you got 2 pieces of parcels on either side. One's the town's side on the Brook side, but across the street, that field was pretty dry years ago, but Franklin owns that too, I mean, but I don't know if there's contamination from the anodizing going down to that.
No.
Well, a possibility. Just a chance.
I think more of the hazardous waste came from rustling.
Rustlick was horrible.
But anyhow,
So, this is all great. We'll just wait to hear from you as to progress and updates.
yeah, we'll give you updates, but if you have comments, please share them. We'll capture them and send them forward. But if you have nothing yet, then we'll just update you when we have something to share. We'll certainly copy with the action plan when it goes out.
Okay.
Was this survey all about the strategic planning? Is that when these people completed this? Or was it
So we introduced it then, we kicked it off. It was an online survey. We do have the results available on our website, but if you'd like,
For this, you know,
we can send you a link to all that information, make it easier for you folks.
Are there any large tracks on Route 40 left that can accommodate
Yes.
that?
Yes. Not that we've been looking.
I'm sure you've got the old sifter out, you gotta look through everything now. That's a lot of space required.
Well, I think the big thing is the state really has to provide you guys with more information and this estimating tool and everything else that you're supposed to have.
Yeah.
And then, because I think what you guys have done so far is great with the limited amount of capacity that they've given you.
We did secure recently a grant for $75,000 to retain consultant services to assist us with this.
Oh, nice.
Which, so it's not completely unfunded mandate here. It's a good grant. We hope to secure the services of a consultant that might have some good architectural expertise too, because we think that would help a lot with character. So we think that's valuable. So yeah, it's still early, but we'll certainly keep you apprised of that, and we'll be sure to send you the action plan. But feel free to reach out either, as a board or even individually. We welcome all your comments.
When did they launch this? I mean, you're giving you to January. When did they launch it, to your knowledge?
So this, originally, the new Section 3A of the Zoning Act, it did come out a while ago. And then we were promised, there was preliminary guidance documents, draft guidance documents. And so then there was a lot of public input, as you can imagine. It wasn't necessarily embraced wholeheartedly by some of the communities. And so they made some changes. They created another category of MBTA communities, like a rural adjacent, and so they have more time to come to compliance, but Westford is unchanged. We still have the original deadline. But it was difficult. We didn't want to go full steam ahead either until we actually had the actual final guidelines, because we could have been wasting resources. And then we also had to work with the grant window for applying, and we just recently got notice that we secured that. But there's still an administrative process there to go through. So I think we're off to a good start, but we're just trying to get all the feedback we can as early as we can.
Is there a bus that provides people transportation to the,
So
from
we
that
do
Bell
have
out? Yeah.
LRTA.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes through Reynolds Road.
But this was really Baker's push, right?
That's what? Well,
This was Baker's push, and if he's gone, is someone, the legislature is not jumping all over it.
well, that's one, that's above my pay grade. Two, it is law, Massachusetts 40A, Section 3A. It's
No, I understand, but because many towns are pushing back hard. It's a great idea, but not here.
honestly, as an adjacent community, 924 units, I don't think is that great of a challenge. We just have to show potential between existing and proposed. And if you look at just the two Bell properties, I mean, we don't know yet how much credit we can get for those. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if it's anywhere close to the actual units that are there now, I mean,
That's half of it.
we could have a substantially smaller district, but we don't know that yet. But just before knowing that, you know, some of these areas make sense. It can create some positive new growth. And not for nothing, they're probably in a good location for some of this. And things like even some of those smaller parcels next to Orchard Square, you know, they could help Orchard Square by having, you know, foot traffic, maybe customers there. It's been kind of this no man land between Kimball's and Concord Road. So there are some opportunities here, we think, and we don't want to forget that some of the hotel industry has not been the strongest of recent times. So, you know, it wouldn't be the worst thing to give them some opportunities to help themselves or allow for some other redevelopment to succeed. It's in a place where there would be walkable destinations. We do have the capacity to support it. And this could be a tool to make our zoning much more flexible, such that our businesses can better adapt to these changing times and allow for multiple principal uses on a lot, mixed-use development, and maybe we can find ways to incentivize the kinds of development we want to see happen. So I don't think it's just a mandate, I think it's also an opportunity for us.
Do we have any idea, remember that when they did the housing across from the bucket, it was gonna be millennials who will use the train to go, they were supposed to supply buses to go over the train. Did that ever come to
That's what I was just
fruition?
asking.
The
You
Bell
know,
property.
well, Bell said they were gonna have buses that,
I
'cause
think they were
gonna-
going to, they had to, I believe, become a member of the, what was that? No, it was, I know exactly what you're talking about. They did sign up for that membership. I think there was a limited commitment. I honestly do not know if they are still part of that, but we can check and follow up. I know.
That was one of the big selling points, they thought.
Yeah.
right, yeah, because they
Yeah.
thought people from Boston were gonna.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Do we know, do people walk from that area to restaurants and stuff? Or do we have information to that effect? I guess?
I see them.
Yeah, I see them, yeah.
It'd be better if they had sidewalks, but.
Yeah?
How about the LRTA? Is that how useful, how used is that? Any sense on?
You see the bus all the time.
See it,
Yeah,
don't
but
see
it's
it
empty.
very full.
Yeah.
So I
Goes
think,
all up to Littleton.
Yeah.
I think, pre-COVID, their membership had been going up. I think it did not do so great during the worst of the pandemic, but I don't know if they actually added more stops along the same route. I don't know, we can look into that, see what the changes are for that route.
There'll be a lot of people getting on at the car wash
Yep,
because they work at the hotel.
Hotel.
Yeah.
And they're going back to Lowell.
same thing
Chelmsford or
for
wherever.
They
the
have that stop
Regency
too, right there,
Yeah.
Market Basket too. right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, Market Basket, a lot,
Yeah.
yeah.
And Panera, you know, I've seen on multiple occasions, they're like, oh, gotta catch my bus, go. You know, so, I mean, it was being used. I don't honestly know to what
But
capacity.
who's
but it's being
spearheading this
used.
big one? Is this the MDTA or Amtrak or who's pushing this for rail?
So, right now, the law is for MBTA communities, so they look for MBTA facilities, so LRTA doesn't count, not saying anything about them, it's just, it's not an MBTA facility. So, they're only focusing on MBTA services right now.
That's encouraging.
All right.
Well done, Thank you.
Anything else? You got your hands full. It's a lot of work.
So can we have a motion to close this meeting?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. That's a big, massive job. That's a